Hello there, and thanks for joining me tonight. I'm digital artist Aaron Rutten, and I'm going to be doing some painting using Corel Painter and a Wacom Cintiq 27 QHD Touch. I'll also be answering questions from you, the audience. So if you have any questions about digital art, feel free to post them in the comments. And I'm going to actually switch so you can see more than my head. I was trying to be all slick and like, bam, I'm going right into the live stream. I'm going to start drawing, no dilly-dallying, no screwing around. And then what do? I start trying to draw when all you can see is my face. Typical Aaron move. So what I'm going to do here is just paint this sketchy nonsense here. And this is what I'm going to use as the framework for a drawing. Now, it's not going to necessarily be a realistic drawing. It's going to be kind of abstract, kind of surrealistic. But people always want to know, how do I come up with ideas, or what do I draw? Like, I want to draw, but I don't know what to draw. This is a good way to kind of get inspired. So I'm going to select a ink brush here, and I just like to kind of look at this for a minute and let my imagination do its thing. Now, you may look at this and you may go, this is just a bunch of squiggly lines. How can you even see anything in here? But how can you see shapes and clouds? That's your imagination. Your imagination fills in the gaps. All your imagination needs is a hint. And once you get that hint, you start to see things. That's why people think they see ghosts and UFOs and all that stuff. You get a small fraction of the information, and then your mind just goes wild with the rest. So what I see here is kind of like a horn kind of thing sticking out over here. So I will go ahead and start there, and then this looks to me like it could be some sort of dragon. Although we'd have to see how that pans out. Maybe this is like an eyelid or something. Then you don't have to follow every single line. For example, that could be a nostril, since it's kind of floating there. Then I see this kind of coming over here. Something like that. Pears here, good to see a pear. Xander's here. Crinklecat's here. AWD's here. Apparently I'm AWD's father. We'll have to do some genetic testing to get to the bottom of that. Okay, so kind of looking like a donkey, part dragon. And you don't have to use every line, but you do start to see stuff here. At least I do. If you're not able to see things in the lines, then you need to work on your imagination. Imagination is one of those things where it's like a muscle. It's like anything else. If you want to get good at having imagination, then you need to build it. And I actually have a great video you can watch that has lots of different tips and techniques for building your imagination. But it's actually pretty easy. There's a lot of things that we enjoy in life that build our imagination. Movies, video games, TV, books. Art is one of those things, but if you're having trouble with art and you're getting stuck, then maybe one of those other things will work to kind of build your imagination and inspire you. But you can see there's this zigzag kind of neck appearing here if I hide the sketch. And the great thing about drawing this way is you don't have to stress out about drawing something. You don't. It's not like when I'm drawing. I say this every time I draw this kind of stuff, but it's not like anyone's going to look at this and hassle me about it and say that it doesn't look realistic, or it doesn't look that doesn't look like a dragon donkey all twisted up like a pretzel. I've seen better drawings of dragon donkeys than that. I'm not going to hear that at all. And the cool thing about art is, I mean, not everyone enjoys this style of art, But art isn't always about other people. Sometimes it's about you. In fact, a lot of the time it's about you. And if I'm making this art and I'm enjoying myself, that's really all that matters. You wouldn't want to watch me do a live stream where I'm not enjoying myself. That wouldn't be fun for anyone. And you might notice that there's a lot of inconsistency, you know, like some people appreciate that. I, for one, like getting new experiences, and I don't like, you know, I like some routines, but I don't like routines all the time. So some people might appreciate that, you know, I'll just do a live stream randomly without announcing it more than 10 minutes ahead of time, and then just decide right on the spot what I'm going to draw. And sometimes it's something, and sometimes it's nothing. And today it's nothing. But hopefully that's still enjoyable. That's why I'm doing the Q&A too. At the very least, you can see me drawing some lines and you can kind of get a feel for my technique here. You'll notice that among the things that I'm doing, I'm drawing pretty quick gestures here. I'm not afraid to use my undos, because why not? I draw this way a lot with ink in sketchbooks. So this is kind of a style that I've been working on for a while. So, you know, typically in that case I wouldn't really use undos. You know, now you definitely have to admit that I'm going to just draw it in here, but this is an arm. I mean, come on. Look at that. You know, that's clearly a shoulder. There's the bicep, there's the forearm, and you could even see that there's legs in the background too. You can just see all these things. And as you start to put together a piece, like I said earlier, your imagination fills in the gaps. So if you just start putting in some lines here on top of this stuff, all of a sudden you're going to start to rule out, or not even necessarily rule out. I guess if my mind knows that this is the head of the creature, if it's going to be a creature, then you can infer that moving along a similar body plan as most animals have on Earth, there's going to be an arm here and a leg there and a tail there or something. Especially if you know it's going to be a dragon, that kind of points you in that direction. But I could just as well put a head over here on the end if I wanted to, because again, this is not based on reality. And I don't really know what you call this. Some people have coined this kind of drawing as Zentangles, and I don't like when somebody just, you know, for their own personal gain to drive traffic to something that's basically already existed, they coin a term and call it Zentangles, because I hate to tell you, those Zentangles have been around since, like, you know, petroglyphs, paintings in caves and things like that. Those are Zentangles. And I'm pretty sure they weren't called Zentangles back then, so I don't know how you're going to just hijack that whole thing and then go, oh, these are Zentangles. Really? You just invented that? Have you ever been in a cave? So that kind of irritates me that I hear this kind of stuff referred to as Zentangles. Now these are some pretty far out Zentangles, or whatever you want to call them. I just call it doodling, because that's what it is. It's letting the mind wander. And that's how you build your imagination. You start to see stuff, and this background thing, this blue thing that I'm drawing on top of, this is your training wheels, right? This is the scaffolding, or it's the framework or the skeleton of your drawing. But this doesn't have to be here as a blue lines. Eventually you can just draw this kind of stuff, or whatever you want. It can be realistic or whatever. You can draw that without having to have something pre-existing, because you've built up your imagination, and your imagination is strong, and you have to keep it strong. You have to exercise it constantly. So I'm going to put in some kind of tail thing here. Looks kind of like a fishtail, so you know what? Even though I'm trying to represent this more or less as a dragon, the fishtail is here. That's what I see, so that's what I'm going to draw. That's kind of a whale tail, actually. Fishtail goes... No, yeah, fish are up and down, right? Sharks are like that, whereas... Or sharks are fish, whereas whales have the sideways one. Like whales go like that if you look at it from the side, whereas fish and sharks are vertical. You always get to learn some kind of partially right facts when you watch my live stream. Okay, we got some good questions here that I will answer while I'm drawing. Did I ever do a review on Medibang Paint Pro? Yes, I did. If you search my channel for free art apps, it should come up, and I did like kind of a showdown between, I believe it was 5 different apps that are free, and I believe Medibang was probably like number 2 or something next to Krita, so it's all right. But you know, I think Krita just, I mean, not to spoil the video or anything, but Krita is just, it's got a lot of stuff. I mean, there's some things that Medibang has that Krita doesn't. Like each of them had their own strengths, and hopefully the point that came across in the video is that you don't necessarily have to pick one. They're all free, so you can download all 5 of them. And fortunately, most of them, well, I don't know about most of them, some of them have cross-compatible layered file formats like the PSD format, which will let you save as a PSD, and then you can bring that same PSD into Krita or into Photoshop or into Medibang or into many other art applications that support that format. And then you can use the tools in one application and then move on to another application, and there you go. So I'm just going to hide this for a second now, see what I got here. Kind of an interesting character. I don't know what this would be useful for. Maybe a video game or a movie will come out someday that'll have, maybe the next Star Wars movie, this will be the new thing. All the kids will be wearing this on their pajamas. They're really overdoing it with the Star Wars advertising now too. It's like, you go into the pet store to get some dog food, and then there's like, you get hit with Star Wars immediately, and it's like, I'm pretty sure my dog doesn't care about Star Wars and is not going to go see the movie. Not because it was disappointed by the prequels, but just because it's a dog and it doesn't go to see movies, and it could care less if its you know, bone looks like a lightsaber, or its food is Banta flavored. You know, nobody cares about that. I think it's appropriate to advertise Star Wars wherever it's appropriate, but the pet store is really not one of those places. Call me old-fashioned. So I think as far as the bulk of what I want to put in here, this is the essence, this is the core drawing. So now I'm going to do some shading to it, and I'll do more than just this one drawing, don't you worry. Crazy donkey looking dragon, says Crankle Cat. AWD wants to know what program I'm using. I am using Corel Painter 2018. Pear is using free software. Krita is very complete for them. They recommend it. I recommend it too, as free art apps go. Corel Painter just happens to be my favorite. It's not free, but it's definitely well worth the money. And best of all, you can get a coupon to save $100 off of it if you use coupon 2017AR at checkout at painterartist.com. There probably, if I'm smart, is a link in the video description or in the live stream description. If not, I'm sure you can find it on my channel. So let's add a little bit of shading now. I like to do hatching. And hatching is essentially just using lines to create a sense of three-dimensional form or a variance in tone. So if I only have black and white here, and I don't want to take out a pen and add gray, how do I simulate gray? And I need gray to add contrast and form to help this look three-dimensional. It already has some three-dimensionality implied in the shape, and there are contours because there's overlapping things and things like that. So you can already kind of tell what the forms are. But if I want to accentuate that, then I either need to add some other values, some other gray colors, or I need to do some hatching. And hatching is essentially just little lines. Now when they're parallel to each other, that's called hatching. When they intersect with each other, then that's called cross-hatching. And so, in addition to building your imagination when you're drawing this way, even though it may seem kind of pointless, maybe not, but everybody's, you know, not everybody, but a lot of people are really hung up on having to draw realistically, and art has to be all about drawing realistically, and man, does that take the fun out of art. At least in my opinion. I like to draw stuff realistically, and sometimes I like to draw stuff that's not realistic. If you're tuning in today and you've never seen my work before, you might get the impression that this is all I can do, but no, I can draw realistically. I just don't feel like I'm a slave to it. I don't feel like I'm a slave to anybody, really, other than myself. And so I do what I want to do. And that's what these live streams are all about. Doing what I want to do. Sometimes it's about what you want to do, though. I do take requests and answer questions and things like that. But then you get to see, you know, you get to see what a real artist is. Too many people on YouTube, whether it's in the art community or outside of the art community, too many people are giving viewers like a warped sense of what it's like to be not only like an industry professional or a hobbyist, but also just a human being. Because if you make all your videos too perfect and all your live streams are too planned, then everybody thinks that you're just a perfect person, and like, wow, I have to be perfect like them, and I'm definitely not, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that you all out there aren't perfect, maybe you are, but most of us, if not all of us, have imperfections. It's just people on YouTube can edit out their imperfections. People at home don't get to see that. And a live stream is good for that. Because then people get to see your mistakes. And I think that's good. You know, there's probably a lot of people, a lot of artists who would live stream and they'd be more prepared. They'd have something already created ahead of time, and they'd already have a theme and, you know, all that stuff. Already have a sketch or something, and, you know, try really hard to impress people. But the thing is, you know, impressing people isn't 100% of the picture. People need to be able to relate to you, and they need to be able to, like, actually have some confidence in themselves. And I think if you do too many slam dunks in front of people all the time and you don't mess up, people lose confidence because they feel like they have to do everything perfect the first time. So, you know, there's been live streams where I've drawn some stuff that's not my best work. This probably isn't my best dragon donkey, but, you know, I'm doing what I can. But if some of you can watch me draw something that's, you know, not my best work, and then go, wow, well, okay, even this guy messes up and makes bad art, then you'll feel okay about doing it yourself. You know, if there's, among other goals as an artist who's able to share my work and, you know, my opinions of art, I think if there's one thing that I'd like to improve in the art community, it's to get rid of that elitist attitude where there's artists who feel like they have to be the best and you have to make art a certain way, otherwise you're not a real artist, and only certain people can be artists. It just takes the fun out of it. I mean, good for you if you draw, you know, really well, and you can do this and you can do that, and you worked for this company and you went to this school. That's awesome, but there's just millions of people who just don't even care and aren't impressed by that. So, you know, that's something that I think a lot of people need to get over. And it's hard because when you're an artist, you know, you get a lot of praise from people and you start to feel like, you know, you're good and this and that, but you don't need to take it beyond that. It's nice to get compliments now and then, but, you know, no one's ever going to be the best artist in the world. Just the best and perfect. These are concepts that aren't based on reality. They're just concepts. And, you know, just think about, let's say you do really well as an artist and you become really, really famous, but you're spending all your time trying to please everybody, and you're, you know, so worried about what other people think of you, and, you know, you're kind of like a slave to people. Even if you end up being a really great artist, even if you end up being Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci, if you're not happy that whole time that you're doing it, then that's just misery. And it doesn't matter how much fame you have or how much money you have or how many people see your work. If you're not happy as a human being, that sucks. You know, you should be able to be happy in life, especially if you're doing something cool like doing art. And the great thing is, you don't have to draw realistically to be successful, and you don't have to draw realistically to be happy. If you want to, that's fine. I'm not saying that people shouldn't do what they want to do. They shouldn't draw realistically. If that's what you want to do, do it. But if you don't feel like you're good at it, or you don't feel like that's your thing, or you just don't want to do it, then don't let anything stand in your way. You do the kind of art that you want to do, and you find a way to be successful with it, even if there's other artists doing it who aren't successful, or even if it seems really difficult, or if it seems like, you know, people aren't going to get it. Eventually people will. There's stuff that's cool nowadays that I don't even understand. I don't even understand how it's cool, but it is, and that makes me an old fogey. And, you know, I don't like to feel that way, but there's a lot of stuff that I just don't get. But that's okay, because to each their own, you know, and just because I don't like something or I don't enjoy it doesn't mean that other people can't. So there's lots of stuff that I enjoy that people think is really lame. You know, we're all enjoying digital art right now, but there's a lot of people who think that, you know, not even digital art, but just art in general is boring or uninteresting. You might be shocked to hear that, but it's true. We all think it's really cool because I'm assuming that you're really into it. If you're watching somebody draw right now, you must really be into art. So I'm getting all this practice drawing all these lines. You know, if I did want to draw something realistically, all this practice I'm getting from hatching and drawing my smooth lines, this is all going to help me later. Plus I'm building my imagination. So again, even if you're drawing realistically, you may find that some of the skills you have that you've built from developing your imagination by drawing non-realistically and non-objectively, those can help you in any application. And vice versa. Having a certain knowledge of human anatomy and animal anatomy helps me to make these judgments about where to put, you know, the muzzle and the eyes and the arms and the legs and all that stuff. Even though it's not based on reality, there's still elements of reality in it. I like that I can gesture here and do this. So let's see. Just checking out the comments here. Xander has a good question. How do I get the motivation to make digital art? What motivated me in the first place? Let's just narrow that down to how do I get the motivation to make art, because to me, you know, I don't only make digital art. That's just kind of my primary focus right now. Let's put it on my head for a minute here. I've seen a lot of my hands. Let's look at my head. Actually, let's see if we can do this. Yay, I can be in the corner so I don't have to be so big. It's easy for me to have motivation to make art because, like, this is my job, essentially. What I'm doing right now, live streaming isn't directly going to make me income. It's not like by the end of this live stream, I'm going to have made $100. Unless you click that super chat button down at the bottom of the chat and you super chat me some money, which is totally cool. You could do that. I'm not even kidding. You know, and unless people super chat me some money, I'm not making anything off of this, but it's part of nurturing my YouTube channel. You know, it's an element of it. It's part of an overall strategy, and all of these things that I do you know, YouTube and selling courses and Patreon and all that stuff. All of this makes it so that I can be a full-time artist. But at the same time, like, it doesn't matter if I have a Patreon, it doesn't matter if I have a YouTube channel. If I'm not making content for it all the time, like every single day, I got no content, I got no channel, I got no job. So I have to do it. It's not like I can get up and be like, I don't want to make art today. You know, I'm gonna go watch DuckTales or something. I can't do that, and I don't want to do that. I'm actually like, if I had more time to make videos and art, I would. And I feel like I don't have enough time. Like, I use like every ounce of my time, of my work time that I've scheduled. And I have time that I spend that's not at work, but that's how I spend a lot of my time, is not necessarily just making art, but editing videos and making videos, you know, things that are related to art. But I know that's not helpful to you because you might not necessarily be in my same position. So if I go back to, you know, getting motivation about making art before that was my job, I guess I have to say that was still something that I wanted to do. And that's a way that I wanted to spend my time. I don't know. It's just, some people have it and some people don't. And that doesn't mean that you can't find it within yourself. It just means that, you know, some people are just compelled to make art. Like, it's an obsession. So I've never really found it that difficult. Like, I've wanted to do it ever since I was a little kid, and have. And I've always, you know, I've always done it in one way or another. I've slowed down and I've kind of taken some breaks here and there. But for the most part, I've kept at it. I know it takes inspiration, you know, inspiration. If you search my channel, you can find a great video that goes into more detail about that. But inspiration can come from a lot of places. It can come from other people. It can come from places that you're visiting. It can come from something you've seen on the TV. It can come from music you're listening to. But you need inspiration. You need a reason to paint. So maybe it takes sitting down and like just writing down in words what kind of art you want to make, what kind of artist you want to be, and why you want to make art. And I think if you have a better understanding of that, maybe you'll find that that's your purpose, you know, and that's your reason, that's your drive. If you don't have a purpose and you don't have a reason and you don't have a drive and you don't want to make art and you don't enjoy trying to make art, then that gets tricky. I don't want to discourage anybody and say art's not right for you, because people can find it within themselves, but that you have to search within yourself. You know, you have to spend a lot of time like in your own head thinking about what you want and what you want to do. That's, you know, that's how people come up with ideas. That's how people decide what they want to do in life. And I think all too many people don't spend enough time inside their head. They're too focused on like all this stuff that's going on around them. But take some time to just sit and think about what you want. So I think that's all the hatching I'm going to do. But basically what that has done is a couple of things. It's kind of separated areas from other areas where it creates kind of like a shadow effect. And then it creates a little bit of form. You know, like if there's light coming from the top, then the undersides of things would be a bit darker. And drawing these lines kind of gives you the illusion of gray, or a different tone between black and white. I'm going to further enhance that by adding some halftone effect. Now, halftones could also be considered something that's very similar to hatching, and that is called stippling. And in stippling, you make a lot of little tiny dots. You make, you know, it's kind of like pointillism. A halftone is a printing method where you make like a grid of dots, and the dots are varying sizes and spaced differently, and you can create different kinds of tones that way depending on the dot pattern. So I'm essentially getting kind of like a hybrid of stippling and a halftone. That's way too big of a brush. I would have loved to have had this when I was in college for a brief period of time. Was in commercial art, which was like doing stuff that people do on computers nowadays, like design logos, but they were doing it with like actually like rulers and T-squares and stuff That doesn't mean that I'm like 60 years old or anything, because they actually were doing that up until not that long ago. There was a particular project that I tried to do, which was, ooh, actually, I can show you one. I just dug it out of a box. Let's see here. There were actually, I did a few stipplings and some cross hatchings. So that's a stippling. This was done with probably Sharpie or some sort of ink, you know, like felt tip ink marker. But basically you make a bunch of dots, that creates your tone. You know, you can see there's some different shades in the hair there, and it makes the hair look three-dimensional. But if we zoom way out here, I almost knocked over my camera. When you get really far back there, all those dots come together in your eye. They compress together because that's what perspective does. You know, you may notice if you look at, you know, like train tracks or something, as they go into the distance, they kind of converge and get closer together. That's what these dots do. And so that's stippling. This is also a good analogy for resolution. People are always talking about, you know, like what resolution do you paint in? And they want to know about that. You can imagine that these dots are like pixels, and the more dots you have, the more detailed the image can be. If I had done bigger dots and not as many of them, it wouldn't look as much like a face. And if I had done many, many more finer dots, let's say 10 times more dots, it might look like a photograph. If you do too many dots and too high of a resolution, it's going to just completely slow down your computer. So you only need to use as many as are really necessary. And if the image is small, you need more dots closer together. If the image is very big, then you need fewer dots that are further apart, because you're going to be looking at it from farther away. And a small image you'll look at probably pretty close, like this. You'll be holding it right in front of your face, or if you're at an art gallery, you know, you'd be looking at it right about there. But if this were a big, big, giant piece, you'd be standing farther back, so you wouldn't need all those dots. Put this somewhere safe where I don't destroy it. This is actually not an original too. You may notice the edges are all perfect on it. I gave the original to somebody, and this is just a scan that I have of it that I printed out. But this is the only, other than the original, the only other copy, as far as I know. So there you go. You got to see some old artwork there. Now let's see if I can get my, oh, that's not the right one. There it is. Get my thing back here. So I'll keep doing my stippling. But what I was saying, I digressed a bit. When I was doing those, it would have been great to have this brush that can just create a bunch of dots like this, because as you can imagine, after you make about 1,000 dots, you kind of, you know, you're getting sick of making dots at that point. And you have to keep doing layers and layers and layers of it to get all those different tones. It's actually quite difficult. And I remember that particular art teacher was always really hard on me because I thought I was really awesome, just like I do now. And, you know, I'd submit work, and, you know, she kind of would do these like one-on-one sessions where she'd sit down with you and critique your work, and, you know, I'd bring in something like that, and she'd be like, oh, that's, you know, it's pretty cool, but, you know, it looks flat. It needs more dots. And I'm like, screw you, it needs more dots. I just spent, like, you know, hours making dots. I'm not gonna go make any more dots. But she was right. But, you know, like I was saying earlier, someone might have looked at that and thought it was pretty cool. Someone might have even bought it. So who am I making art for? Am I making art for my art teacher, or am I making art for myself? That's what I have to ask myself. So adding these dots does a couple of things. It also kind of helps to establish that form, but it gives it a little bit of texture also, and some contrast. And then if I do a lot of dots close together, it starts to look darker, and if I do them farther apart, then it looks like a lighter tone. So maybe there's a shadow that's kind of breaking up and diffusing and disappearing. And this is just kind of stuff you just put in. On the wrong thing. Where do I want to be on? Nope. There we go. I wanted you to be able to see my hand there, and I messed that up. Oh, my camera's... I bumped my camera. When I'm putting these in, I'm just kind of just dancing around. You know, like, I have a good idea of where I want them to be, but I'm not thinking too much about it. It's like when you're putting ketchup on a hot dog or something, or on a vegetarian, non-meat hot dog, which is what I would eat. A nice, juicy, rubbery soy dog. I would, you know, I'd just dump it on there, and I'd put a little relish and maybe some barbecue sauce, but I wouldn't be sitting there with the barbecue sauce, like, trying to make sure that every drop was, like, evenly spaced. I'd just put it on there, man. And that's how you have to do it when you're just putting in little dots and stuff. You have to do it like barbecue sauce on a veggie dog. You can quote me on that. So I'll try to answer some questions here, and then we'll do a different drawing. I'm going to need to really quickly take a bathroom break, because all this live streaming, you know, makes you have bodily functions. Xander wants to know what I think of Pictaro. I have no idea what Pictaro is, but I'll have to look that up. Abella Studios says, cool, thank you, Abella. Mary J loves the Morrison portrait. I don't even know if I said that was Jim Morrison. I guess I might have, but I also just kind of assume that everybody knows who Jim Morrison is. Mary J, the Doors fan here. Have I made work for video games other than my own? No, and I haven't ever completed a game. I've made some demos of games, but it wasn't even that it was too much work. I enjoyed doing all the graphics and animations and music and backgrounds. I didn't like doing the coding, and what would happen is I'd get like a level of a game built, and then I couldn't figure out how to like make the level end and then it go to a boss and then go to the next level, you know, coding kind of stuff that I don't understand. So I'm going to run to the bathroom really quick, and then I'll answer the rest of these questions. I will be back very quickly. I assure you that my bathroom is just basically the closet right next to me, and if you hear any tinkling sounds, just turn down your speakers for a minute. Ah, there I go. Almost knocked my camera over again. Pro tip, don't put your camera right behind your chair. YouTuber live streaming pro tip. I wonder what people on TV do, because it's like, I never see anybody on TV, you know, during a live event be like, hold on, I gotta go pee. And then they get up and just leave everybody hanging like I just did. But that's what they do on YouTube. Okay. What advice would I give to late bloomer artists like yourself? Late bloomer artists. Well, I don't want to ask you your age because maybe you're not comfortable divulging that, but I'm going to assume late bloomer means that you're like at least 20 or 30. Might be older. I don't know if you're like 60 or 70. That's what I would consider late bloomer. But what I get is that you have the opinion that you didn't start like when you were a kid like I did, so, you know, maybe it's going to be more difficult. When I was a kid, probably up until 18 or in my 20s, all I'd draw is just like cartoons, and, you know, I didn't try to draw anything realistic. I didn't try to paint anything. I'd draw with like crayons and colored pencils. So what I did is, yeah, I got some experience drawing, and I was interested in drawing. But it wasn't until my 20s that I made myself learn lighting and painting and texture and all of these things, and I'm still learning a lot of stuff. But a lot of that stuff is stuff that I learned not until my 20s, and I'm only, you know, 35 now, so that's only 15 years. It's never too late to start. There's lots of people lots of my students, lots of my patrons who are my parents' age and have just retired and are just getting into digital painting, and they do wonderful digital paintings. There's people who can take one of my courses and paint something that looks like I painted it, you know? There's people who can paint something that looks better than anything I could ever paint. And, you know, it's just about learning the techniques and the tricks to be able to do it. And yeah, there's practice involved, and you do need to practice to get better. But it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy yourself. I think you can enjoy yourself day one, even if you don't know what you're doing, even if you've never made art before in your life, digital or otherwise. You can have fun making art. And as I said earlier, it's about you having fun. It's not about what I want you to do or what I think of your art or what your parents or your, you know, your spouse or your friends think of your art or the general public. You know, you're making art for yourself. If you're making art to impress other people, you don't have enough time to do that. You need 1,000 years probably to be able to impress everybody, you know, and in that amount of time you'd become irrelevant and your style would be passé, or, you know, nobody would like it anymore. So the people who are successful aren't the people who can draw the most realistically, you know. The two most famous artists who I've met, one who, you know, nearly everybody has seen in the cartoon funny pages, he doesn't draw realistically in the sense that he doesn't do like, you know, still lifes and stuff, but that doesn't mean that his drawings don't convey realism, and it doesn't mean that you don't look at them and instantly know what they are, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't know perspective and proportion and anatomy and all that stuff. It just means that his style is not ultra photorealistic. But he's a millionaire, you know? I know lots of artists who are amazing, you know, like they get gigs for all these great companies and stuff. They're not millionaires, and they can, you know, they can draw ultra realistically, good for them, but they're not millionaires. So that's no measure of success if you want to count it in, you know, monetary terms. And then the other artist that I know, he does the same thing. He does illustrations for children's books. They just put out a movie featuring his character, you know? So like his work is in movie theaters and sold in books all around the world. Again, he doesn't draw realistically. So if you want to draw your non-realistic drawings, or your, you know, drawings that aren't the most awesome things in the world compared to X person or whatever, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. Just make the kind of art that you want to make, and you might find that there's lots of other people who like it just the way it is. I'm not doing too bad drawing these donkey horses and stuff. Donkey dragons. I got a few people watching this. 16. You know, there's something to be said if I was drawing like Wolverine or something in a very fan art style, like that, like concept art, you know, badass kind of stuff. I'd probably have 160 people watching, but I don't want to draw other people's art. I don't want to draw Wolverine. I could do it, but then I'd just be pandering to an audience. That wouldn't be me. That wouldn't be doing anything that anybody else isn't doing. I guarantee you there's no one drawing this kind of stuff right now in a live stream. There's probably a couple people drawing Wolverine right now. That's probably where the other 160 people are that should be watching. Okay, so let's draw something else. Conventions here. Good to see you, Quinn. Happy Mardi Gras. Is it Mardi Gras? Badger wants me to draw Pyramid Head. I'll have to see what that is. Quinvention wants to see a Mardi Gras mask. I like the Mardi Gras face. Now I could just make up a Mardi Gras mask, because I think I know what it looks like. I'm going to pull up a... let's see here. That one's kind of nice. So looking at some ideas for masks. Okay, that's pretty much what I imagined it being. So let's do this. Let's draw a Mardi Gras mask. Is a good idea. I'll go ahead and turn on the old mirror painting mode here. And I just want to get a feel for where this is going to fall on my screen. And so sometimes it can be helpful to draw out a box like that. That's not only going to help me kind of make sure that I keep this centered on my screen where my camera can see it, but it'll also help me estimate the proportions. So that will be my boundary, or my frame for the mask. And then I'll go ahead and do one more guide here, because if this is going to be centered, then I want my eyes to be below center a bit so that the mask is a little bit taller on the top. So that'll be my other guide there. And then you usually have about one eye width between your eyes, but overall the proportion of the eyes I think I want to be a bit bigger. So they could be right about there or so. We'll have them kind of be like cat eyes like this. And then there's some extra stuff here that I don't need that I'll get rid of. I feel like those are a bit too far apart, so let's just try that again. That feels better. Go with something like that. Now this would be kind of where the nose is, so that will be a consideration. Now you can barely see that. What do we do about that? I'll just draw it in thicker so you can see. The exposure on my camera is set a little low there, or not a little low, a little high. Then we can just have some sort of design here. I'm going to just rough it in, like just the overall shape. I'm not even going to really worry about what it is exactly that I'll do. This is going to look kind of like a Wolverine mask. That's what I should do. Change course and just do a Wolverine mask. And I'll embellish on it more and a little bit here. It's kind of cool. It's kind of like a cat. I'll go ahead and duplicate that so that you can see it. And I will just merge those layers and move them up so it fits better on my screen. Okay. So I know I made it darker and then I made it lighter again, but what I wanted to do is make it a little bit more transparent so that I can draw over it. And so let's see. To make this kind of fun, I'm going to ask for some requests of like some sort of theme to put into this, and maybe I'll add multiple themes. So that could be like fire or a cat or nature, you know what I mean? Like, if this is going to be a mask, what's the theme of the mask? And this is just a general shape. Doesn't mean that I'm going to like follow this exact shape. So I'll wait for you all to throw out a few things here, and I'll answer some comments. Warionator says, I watched your video on how to get used to drawing tablets, and it helped. But after using it for like a month, I still can't get the hang of it. You got to do it for more than a month. I hate to tell you that. Everybody's different, but, and I know I said in the video it might only take you a couple weeks or something, but everybody's different. And it depends on how often you're using it too. Like maybe you're not using it very much. I mean, how often did you even use it in that month? Maybe it'll take 2 or 3 months. Point being, you're never going to get good at anything if you don't spend enough time doing it. And I think a lot of people, myself included, want the instant gratification of like just picking up a guitar and being able to just like rip out music. But I can't do that, and I'm sure you can't do it with a tablet. So I would give it another month, you know, another 2 months, another 3 months, and don't have the goal in mind like I gotta go from being a beginner to being a professional. Take baby steps and try to recognize how much you've improved in a month or in another month or in another 3 months. Look back at your art and you'll be able to see that you've made progress. And it may take as long as it takes, you know, it takes you 6 months, 8 months, whatever. If it takes you a year, after you put in that time, you're good after that point. You can draw whatever you want. You're going to be more confident on the tablet. So put in the effort, because there's going to be a huge reward at the end, you know. It's like going to school, you know. You can't go get a degree in a month. You have to go to school for years, you know. So be a little more realistic, but don't be so hard on yourself about having to like absolutely master it. You don't need to master it. You just need to make progress, and you'll get better as you go along. And yes, Quinn's said basically the same thing I just said. It takes time to get used to it. They know that from experience. It took them a while to get used to their Intuos. In time with practice, it will be easier and more comfortable to use. Very true. Xander agrees. Xander wants to see Mexican culture as the theme. Quinn Vincent wants to see space. Kitsy wants to see Mardi Gras theme. Luke says old-fashioned. Electrodi says brigade-type image comics. So I'll try to add some of that stuff in. Well, the Mexican flag has an eagle with a snake in its mouth on a cactus. So maybe I'll go with kind of like an eagle kind of beak. It's looking like Howard the Duck now. Any Howard the Duck fans out there? You guys are like, Howard the who? Whoops. So I want to take all of this and just move it up a bit. I'm probably going to have to make it smaller too. And while I'm at it, I'm going to make... Ah, no! The trick here when you're drawing in symmetry mode is you do not want to move it off of your symmetry plane. That would be bad, because then it won't be symmetrical anymore. So I can move it up and down, that's totally fine. So that's going to be kind of an eagle-ish kind of nose there, maybe something like that. You may have seen me switch the angle that I was drawing. Sometimes I find if I've done it a couple times and I can't get it, you do it the other direction in reverse, and sometimes you can get it that way. Some little feathers like that. Okay, so that's going to be, I may add some more to it, but that's going to be my Mexican theme. Badger's Mexican, so they second the Mexican theme. There's also a snake in the flag. There's a snake in the flag. There's a snake in the eagle's mouth. Let's do that too. That'd be kind of, well, that's not really very Mardi Gras. We'll put a snake somewhere in it. How about that? I should do that now so I don't forget, because I have a good idea for that. Maybe we'll have it be kind of an asymmetrical element. I set my cursor to be just a dot for something else I was working on, and it's still that way. So I'm not used to working that way because then I don't see my brush diameter for what it really is. But that's okay. Something like that. I could probably do a cleaner, more even snake, but I think that's okay. Something kind of like that. That's not the world's best snake, but there you go. Okay, that's cool. I like it. Now let's see what else we got here. Space. Space would be cool. So let's do some oh, I want my mirror back. To watch all the stupid faces I make when I'm trying to concentrate. That's really the best part of the live stream. I know that's why you watch. Watch me make some. I get to go back and watch these later, and I'm like, wow, I was making a weird face while I was doing that. So kind of like a Saturn orb thing. You know what? I'm gonna do something here to this camera. Let's see here. I'm gonna make it so you can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. I'll leave it like that. I like to amp up the exposure because over here it gets a bit darker because the camera's, my camera's off to the side, so it appears darker, and then you see some like weird, you can see what I'm talking about. It bothers me, but you can see what I'm doing better here, so it's a compromise. Quinn has some good suggestions about adding in some space colors. Quinvention says, no, we watch the live streams because of the Bob Breton that lays dormant within you. Yeah, he's come out a few times. He's, The problem is I end up beating the devil out of my pen, and then it breaks, and then I gotta order a new one. They don't hold up as well as those brushes. So I like the galaxy spiral thing that you suggested there, so I'm going to do that. But I'm going to have some asymmetry to this. I know Mardi Gras masks are typically a little more symmetrical, but this is my Mardi Gras mask. I'm going to do it the way that I want. Sometimes if you do stuff too slow, it doesn't come out very smooth. You can see there when I was being too hesitant about it, it did not come out very smooth, and if I just do it, it looks a lot better. Let's have some random spirals here. Okay. Let's put mirror painting back on. I'll go ahead and just put in the eyes. I don't know what Brigade image comics are. I know what image comics are. Brigade was a specific kind of comic. Image comics, all I really got into was Spawn, Shadowhawk, Savage Dragon. What else? The Max. That's about it. Actually, I have some too. If I'm going to show off stuff in the live stream, why not just show off more stuff? Let's see here what we got here. Take a little break, a little breaky poo. Check out some of my stuff here. Alright. If I look sweaty, it's because I'm sitting under two bright lights in a very hot room with like a Cintiq and a TV and a monitor and a computer. The Max #1. I know there's at least one person in this live stream right now that gives a crap about this, so that's why I'm going to do this. I'm going to just show you all these. Shadowhawk #1, foil cover. I know these are worth like $1.80 or something on eBay, so don't get the impression that these are like valuable comics by any means, but they mean a lot to me because I had all these when I was a kid and I wrecked them all because I didn't care about stuff back then. And then Spawn 1. I found these at a thrift store, like just like they are, with the cardboard back and, you know, in the sleeves and everything. They were like really cheap. They were like 50 cents each or something, so I bought a bunch of them. Basically, I got Spawn 8. And this, I love this stuff as a kid too. Like this is the kind of, you know, this is the kind of stuff I would draw. I couldn't draw this good as a kid, but a lot of this stuff was done in Photoshop. A lot of this coloring. I don't know that they drew anything with a tablet per se. They probably scanned it or photographed it and then colored it. But a lot of this stuff is colored with Photoshop back before Photoshop was even that sophisticated. Shadowhawk versus the Savage Dragon. Shadowhawk 3. Shadowhawk 2. So I got a good like series of Shadowhawks. Spawn 4 with the Violator there. Spawn 2. So these are cool to me, you know, like they don't need to be worth anything. They're just, it's fun to have this stuff. I mean, that's all stuff that's behind me is like stuff I had as a kid or stuff I wanted as a kid. That's what happens as an adult. You get some like extra money, and why not just buy a bunch of stuff that you couldn't get when you were a kid? Gen 13 was made by Image too, I think it was. The MTV series were amazing of the Max. I really like the Max. I would draw the Max like comic books instead of doing schoolwork. In grade school, I'd get in trouble because I'd be like, you know, everyone else would be doing their work and I'd be drawing like the Max comics and stuff. Make my own little comic books. Let's go back to this. There we go. Long live the old dudes, for sure. Electrodi had all those when they came out, all those comic books. Quinvention says, turn down one of the lamps then. But then I won't have this nice, even lighting. I'll look like crispy bacon. It's also like a matter of like, if there's not enough light, then your shutter speed has to be a lot longer on your cameras, and so things get a little blurry, and just for technical reasons, it just needs to be this way, and I have to be baking. And I can't turn on a fan because then that would mess up the audio, so, you know, I gotta just do what I gotta do. Electrodi used to draw those Image comics in high school too. So I'm going to just see what Brigade was, because I didn't ever get into Brigade. What was that other one? There was another one that was a lot like that too, or it was like a team of like several people. can't remember now. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend on comic books. Like, I was spending my allowance on this stuff, and I didn't, you know, I wasn't a rich kid, so I didn't have much allowance. So I kind of have an idea of what Brigade looks like here. So I'll try to do some eyes that are kind of Brigade style. Yeah, when I was younger, I really wanted to be a comic book artist. Like, that sounded really fun to me. But then as you get older, you know, you realize what you really want to do, and I think it would be fun to make comic books. You know, as this channel grows and as I, you know, have more time to be able to do more in-depth things like that, maybe that could happen. Maybe I could make a comic book. But it's a lot of work. I've tried to do it. You know, I wrote a script. I mean, the idea on its own is, you know, difficult enough. But I wrote a script, did the inking, did the color, did the backgrounds, did the word bubbles. Basically, I got a page done and I was like, man, that's a lot of work. I don't know if I'd think it was that much work now, because, you know, my work ethic is a lot more intense now, but I don't know. It's a lot. I'd like to do animations too. I'd like to make a video game. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to do, but it requires so much time. You know, making art is something that I can do pretty quickly because it doesn't take a whole lot of time, especially if you just draw dragon donkeys and stuff. But, you know, if I spend too much time on something, then I don't have much to show for it. And unfortunately, if you want to be successful on YouTube, because of how everything is set up, like, you have to, you know, you have to do things a certain way. You have to be able to hold people's attention. You have to make certain kinds of videos to be visible. And so it's really hard for animation channels to get by. I think animation on YouTube has kind of suffered because of that. People do a lot of, like, really, like, not poor animation, but just, like, they can't put a lot of time into it, so they don't. So there's just a lot of, like, very simple stuff out there. And the ideas are funny, and I understand that that's what people enjoy about it. And I'm not knocking any of those artists. It's just, you know, I don't think I could do any better, given the way that things work. But if it takes you, you know, a month to make a short animation that's only a few minutes long, you're not going to get much watch time. You're not, you know, you can't make a living that way. And you can't make a living doing what you're doing, then it's hard, because then you have to balance what you want to do for fun or as a hobby or whatever your side gig is, with what you have to do in order to be able to pay the rent or whatever responsibilities you have, you know. So that's kind of tricky. So those are some kind of like the eyes exaggerated on one of the examples I looked at of Brigade, so hopefully that's Brigade-ish. I'm just checking out the comments here. Quinn says some method to ventilate the heat. Well, that's tricky too, because then if I open my window, then my neighbors can hear me. It sounds like I'm talking to myself. Then I get all self-conscious, you know, and can't have that. That would sound really weird if you were just like, you weren't watching the live stream, but you were just listening to me right now, just talking. It's like I'd sound like I'm either on the phone or I'm a crazy person, so. Quinn's going to use his YouTube channel for an animation company. Yeah, I mean, you can, if that's what you want to do. I'm not saying don't, you know, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from doing animation. I'm just saying it's, and I don't know from experience, I don't have an animation channel, but I do know that, you know, based on how much content I post and the kind of, the kind of response I get from how often I post, that it benefits me to post often rather than not posting very often. I took kind of, for a while I was posting like 5 videos a week for a long time. Like I was doing Draw This like every Tuesday, and I had like a great schedule I was hammering out. Then I just kind of got burned out, and I felt like I was overdoing it. So then I'd just do like maybe 1 or 2 videos a week. And when I started doing that, then, my growth kind of stopped. In fact, I started to kind of lose some traction. But that's also kind of coinciding with the adpocalypses and stuff like that. So I really don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that definitely didn't help my channel to post less often. So let's see, what else did we have here for the themes? Old-fashioned, so I'll try to do a little bit of the old-fashioned Mardi Gras. I'll finish it up with that, even though it looks nothing like a Mardi Gras mask at this point. So I think some kind of feathers would probably be pretty appropriate then. As you can see, those gestures I'm making, they're very fluid. And when I was drawing that stuff earlier, the stuff that looked kind of nonsensical, I can maintain patterns throughout it, and I can get a lot of practice drawing feathers or scales or whatever repetitive stuff. And it's not like I have to have a goal in mind of drawing something that looks just like a bird. I can draw some weird creature and still get practice drawing feathers. Now, one thing that's happening is over here, symmetry is going on top of my asymmetry, so it's getting a little messed up, but that's okay because I'm doing each of these elements on their own layer. So it won't hurt anything for it to be that way. So I'll need to turn off symmetry, go to my eraser, and just try to figure out what's interfering with what here. It's pretty much just that. And then I can hide my sketch. Kind of an interesting design. It's like you just do stuff and you make stuff up, and maybe somebody would like this. Maybe this would be a cool shirt design or something. It's like I didn't have to have a goal in mind. I didn't know what I wanted to do. You all contributed elements to it. And so imagination is really kind of the factor here. It's like you get these prompts. Like you prompted me to do some of this stuff. But I have to take those prompts and use my imagination to turn that into something. Like I didn't have to see this immediately. I didn't see those suggestions and this is what I saw in my head. I added a few pieces here and there, and just like a puzzle, once you add the obvious pieces like the edges and faces of people and stuff, everything else starts to fit in because you can see like against the edges of one puzzle piece, oh, now that one should fit there, and so on, and you can just kind of build it as you go. But it still takes imagination and it takes improvisation. Improvisation takes spontaneity to some degree. It takes confidence. It takes inhibition. And I think, I'm a little inhibited tonight, so I can just kind of just do stuff. But aside from that, even if I were completely sober, I still have so much imagination that I'm able to just make stuff up. I could make up 100 mask ideas right now. But I don't know, people overthink art way too much. If I'd have thought about this ahead of time, I might have, if somebody said, draw me a, Mexican space-themed, Image Comics-themed Mardi Gras mask. You know, I probably would have been like, that's not going to look good. But this actually looks kind of cool, I think. So try to make it look a little more classic. Dare I turn mirror painting back on? I think I will. It's Valentine's Day, so let's have a heart here in the middle. It's not Valentine's Day. I didn't mean to say that. I meant it's gonna be Valentine's Day. By the way, your girlfriend's gonna be pissed. It's Valentine's Day and you're here watching this live stream. You didn't get her any candy or flowers or any kind of other consumer goods. Sleeping on the couch tonight. Why is it every holiday? I mean, it's like, what are these holidays anyways? What are these holidays? I sound like Jerry Seinfeld now. And why do they all involve having to buy candy and like, just like, is this, you gotta spend money. You don't care about your girlfriend or your family or, you know, your boyfriend or your partner, your same-sex partner. You don't care about them if you don't buy them candy. And flowers and G-strings and all that stuff. You're a bad person. Everyone else is doing it, you gotta do it too. And then it's impossible to be like, all right, you know, I don't want to celebrate Thanksgiving because, you know, I don't think it's a good holiday. I think it's a horrible holiday and it's a terrible thing to celebrate. But then it's a national holiday, so it doesn't matter what I think. You know, stores are going to be closed and, you know, people are going to be eating turkey together and drinking gravy and all that stuff. So I can just be sitting at home by myself. But I don't know. So you really can't get out of it even if you don't agree with it. So let me clean some of that stuff up now. This does get a little tedious when you're bouncing between symmetry and asymmetry, because you always got to be aware of like what you're accidentally overpainting. It probably makes more sense to do all your symmetry first, and then you don't have to worry about it and do asymmetry last. But I'm just making this up as I go along, and this works better for me process-wise. So here I need to clean this up. And it's almost kind of hard to see this stuff sometimes too when you're going along. You could very easily miss a spot here. So that's probably all of the symmetry that I will need here. So I'll go ahead and leave that off. And then over here, what do we want to do? Maybe continue that kind of spiral theme. Might be wondering why a spiral? Well, galaxies are spirals. Pretty interesting. You know, geometry is one of the few elements of math that I actually enjoyed. Like, I was never really all that great at math. I mean, I can do basic math and, you know, I can get by, but math class was not my favorite class. But I liked geometry, and geometry is math. And geometry is a trippy thing because, you know, circles and squares and spirals, all of those things exist as a concept. Even if there's no life on Earth, even if there's no spiral galaxy, the concept of a spiral still exists. Like, even if there was no intelligent life at all to witness a spiral, it still can, you know, it is what it is, and a lot of things just exist without having to be created. But the fact that animals come in spiral shapes, like, you know, ammonites and snails that's just pretty cool. And I don't know, it's like, it's math, it's geometry, it's the language of the universe, and at the same time, all of these shapes make up art. You know, this started out as a rectangle. There's circles, there's, you know, triangles, and all of these different geometric shapes in here. And so in a sense, this is kind of mathematical. Like, you could explain this in a mathematical way. You could even have counted all of the points that I made here and like using math. I mean, this is math. This is literally math right here. Like, I'm making this digitally on a computer, so this is all ones and zeros and complex calculations. This isn't a line. This is pixels in a grid. This is a grid of millions and millions and billion. I don't know how many pixels. A lot of pixels. There's a lot of pixels here, and that's pretty cool. So, you know, even though I've never really been that great at math, I'm okay at drawing. So maybe that makes me okay at math in some abstract way, or not. So let's see, what else do we do here? I'm just gonna finish this out here. Not looking so much like Howard the Duck now. Not looking like Howard the Duck now, are you? And, you know, little touches of asymmetry really help, because nothing is really like absolutely symmetrical in real life. So I could add more detail to this, but because I don't want this live stream to be too long, I'm going to not go too nuts with the detail. Put a few scales on the snake just to make it very clear that it's a snake. But I want this to look kind of stylistic, so I want to go too nuts with the scales. And I think I will color this in. Not color it in, but fill it in. And then I will group my lines. And we'll add some colors. So there was a suggestion earlier about using kind of space-themed colors. We'll do that. Obviously, there's going to have to be like some yellows for the beak, assuming it's going to be yellow. And the snake could be green. There were some purples and blues mentioned earlier. Green, depending on the shade, can go, or depending on the hue, can work well with the purple. So maybe we'll do that, kind of a green and purple, and then see what we can add in from there. Maybe I can add a little bit of detail too as I'm adding color with the shading. So let's do kind of envisioning it in my mind a little bit here. I'm going to do the purple first. I might even just, oops, put down a little bit here. And then we'll see it against that green. That ought to be all right. Okay. What that little target is there. It needs to go away. It's bothering me. There we go. So I must have done something to switch to straight line drawing mode there. So I'm just gonna focus on the edges here. You know what, I might even just turn on mirror painting mode just to help me with this. Save me some time. And it's okay that I'm painting over some stuff that I'm not going to want to be that color. I'll probably go another 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes. And then probably call it a night. So the reason why I'm just worrying about the edges is because I'm just going to fill in the center, hopefully, with a paint bucket. But the trick to that is you cannot have an open shape. It has to be a closed shape. I'll show you what I mean by that. If I hide my lines, this is a closed shape. If I'm in here and I'm walking around, look, there's walls everywhere. So there's no way for me to escape. Like if there was a gap there, you know, then the paint could escape out the gap. So switch to the paint bucket, we fill that, bam, bam. We don't have to spend all day coloring in the center of that. That's done. That saved me some time. And then over here, I need to fill this in. I like that purple color, that looks nice. I need to fill in over here. And then we can go ahead and, I'm saying we as if you're doing this with me. We created this together though, technically, so it is we. We're here together. We're a we. That's just, I don't know, that's the educator in me. When I record my videos, I say we a lot. Oh no, what's going on here? That's not, no. What am I doing? I'm gonna turn off mirror painting. So I wasn't looking at that part of my screen. I wasn't looking at the opposite side of my screen, I should say, so I didn't see what I was doing there. And the colors are not all that accurate on my camera, but it's close enough. So I could just go along the edges too here. Sometimes there's just some things where I feel like filling them in one way and then doing it another. And then sometimes I just start doing it and then realize that I'm being inefficient. Like as I'm doing it, I'm like, wow, this is taking a really long time. And then I go, oh wait, maybe there's a faster way to do it. Like this. Let's see, that saves me some time. Every minute you save, that's one more minute that you can put into making art. That could be adding more detail to the current piece that you're working on, or that could be, you know, it could add up to a whole nother painting that you can make in your lifetime. So you gotta work smarter, not harder, as Scrooge McDuck says. Yeah, I've been watching DuckTales, because I got the box, or not the box set, but I've got the like collections of DVDs or whatever. And thinking about it, it's like, what message are they really sending there to kids? It's like Scrooge McDuck is like super rich and he mines the earth and like, you know, exploits everything and has oil fields, and he's like, he has way more money than everybody in Duckburg. And yeah, like sometimes they do nice things, like, you know, they do charitable things or whatever. I've never seen any homeless people in Duckburg, but I don't know if that's an appropriate message for children, that you need to be like you can't just like have enough money to get by, or maybe have a little bit more than that, or, you know, live comfortably, but you need to like have a whole tower full of money to the top that you go diving and swimming in, you know? I don't think that's a good thing to teach kids. So now I could put in a yellow for the beak. That would be an obvious color, but a beak doesn't have to be yellow. And then I want to keep in mind the two colors that I've already put down here. So I've got the green and I've got the, I'm gonna show you something here too. That was the wrong one. There we go. The colors, see, the colors are a bit different. My camera doesn't exactly get the colors right, just because it has to find a balance between it being too light and too dark, or getting the colors right. So close enough though. But anyways, so I've got these two colors. This color here, if we look at my color picker, which is over here in the top right, this little color wheel with the triangle, this is the color I have selected. This color wheel actually happens to be like a proper color wheel as far as complementary colors in the additive or digital art color space. So directly across from it would be a complementary color, which is why I chose that green. Right? I made the shade a little bit more saturated and a little bit darker in value. The hue is what matters though. So then I can do another kind of color harmony, or I could do something monochromatic where I use just different shades of that same green or different shades of that same purple. Or I could do like kind of like a split complementary, which it makes kind of a Y shape. So it starts here and it kind of makes like a very thin V. So this would be complementary and that would be complementary. So I can have that yellow in there. But there's kind of a range of yellow. There's the more orangey yellow and there's the more lemon yellow. And the more lemon yellow is probably going to be a bit more complementary. So we can try it and see how it looks. I'll go ahead and just leave it in this view so you can see the colors a little bit better. I think it's nice to show my hand drawing. Looks like more is going on. The cool thing about live streaming is you can have all these different scenes. Like you can show like different cameras at different times, and it's just fun. It makes you feel like you're like a TV producer or something. This is the kind of stuff that I like to do as a kid. Like I never really had a video camera as a kid, so I couldn't ever really experiment with making videos. But I know that if I did, that's something that I would have really enjoyed, is like making my own movies and, you know, whatever there is to make with a camera. And of course, you know, they didn't really have like very sophisticated video editing programs that I would have had as a kid, so couldn't have done that either, but it's fun to do it now as an adult. So see, that yellow works well. The other yellow probably would have looked fine too, but it wouldn't have been as complementary from a very technical, scientific standpoint. You know, you got to find the balance between science and aesthetics. Aesthetics is just what looks good and what feels good naturally to you, whereas science is like, you know, this color is exactly complementary to that color, and so on, you know. So it doesn't mean that you always have to follow color theory when you're painting. You don't. I could have used that other yellow. That probably would have been fine. But I want this to look a certain way, and in my mind, I had the instinct to know that that yellow would work better. So that's, you know, basically the reason why I chose it. But aside from that, it can be helpful sometimes just to like have your intuition validated by science. So let's see, there should be some other colors in there. Now the other color, if we did the split complementary, would be just another green. And that's, you know, That's all right, but that might be kind of boring. We'll have to see. Doesn't mean I have to use the same hue either. But green does not really fit in with space. I don't know that I want to put in any more green. So what do we want to do for the color here that would be complementary to that? We could do a compound, which is kind of a K shape. So that would be like maybe that and that. If we did it on the other side, maybe there and there. Kind of feeling the aqua, but maybe we'll go with the blue. One thing I want to show you too, just for the heck of it, because this could be helpful to you. Make sure that I open the right thing here. This is a good website. This is color.adobe.com. And here's all your color rules. You got analogous, monochromatic, which means that the hue doesn't change, just the shades. Triad, complementary, which is what we looked at, and as I mentioned, that purplish color would have some sort of kind of light greenish around anywhere around this kind of area. Doesn't have to be like exactly across from it. And then compound, kind of a K shape. Shades, custom. So, you know, if this were going to be my color here, let me move this so I can see both, so I can get that exact color. Let's say it's right around there. Try that. So that gives me a green, gives me some other purples. I think we'll go with maybe this kind of blue here. So I'm going to move that to my other screen so I can see it. So that's right around indigo. I'm going to go with something like that. Yeah, I think that works. Now, I drew kind of like a Saturn kind of thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be peachish colored like Saturn would be. I'm sure there's lots of other planets out there. In fact, I know there are that have rings. When you get in these very tight, confined spaces, sometimes it's easier and faster just to go ahead and fill it in and not worry about painting along the edge and then filling it with the paint bucket. And something like that. Let me just peek at the comments and see if there's a question I can answer while I'm doing this too, so I'm not just running my mouth about nothing. Bunch of stuff going on in the comments here. Conversation I'm not even paying much attention to here. Let's see. Okay, there's some heavy stuff going on in the comments here, so I'll let that play out. All right, no questions. I'll keep on keeping on. I think it's cool that people can hopefully make some friends during these live streams, meet people, you know, that they don't know, other people who have similar interests. Yeah, I like this indigo. And the thing is, these color guides give you an idea of, like, I mean, color.adobe.com can even tell you, you know, which kind of shades work. But it is kind of up to you to decide ultimately, even if Adobe Color tells you what to pick, you have to kind of know what's going to work for your piece, you know? So the science isn't going to get you there 100%. If I'd have chose a lighter indigo or a darker indigo, it might not work as well. Contrast is something to keep in mind. Like if you've already got a lot of light colors, you might want some midtones and some darker values. You might notice that this indigo up against this blue is kind of like Cyclops from the X-Men. Well, I don't know if his costume's like that now, but in the 90s, you know, you'd see colors like that, superhero costumes. Sports team logos have a lot of complementary colors. So then, I don't think a green is going to really be flattering here. So I may just go with some monochromatic tones from here on out. I'm just thinking about this for a second. And I know I want this, these eyes to be white. The great thing about working digitally, and especially if you do everything on layers like I'm doing here, is if you don't like the colors, you can always change them after the fact too. I think I'm going to continue that yellow, because what I feel like you kind of just see stuff in your mind, and you kind of see, like, you know, you can imagine. I don't even have to put the color down to imagine it being there, and I can already see without doing it that if I put like a weird green in there, that's not going to work. And I think I'll even continue it up here. You don't need a dozen colors in your painting, especially if it's something more graphical like this. And maybe the ring will just go ahead and be yellow too. There we go, problem solved. I think something like that looks kind of cool. Now I'll do a little bit of shading on it, and then I'll wrap this up. So the yellow now, I will make an exception here, and I will shift my hue a bit so that I get kind of a more natural shading effect. So this particular hue is breaking out, or it's not really breaking out, it's not breaking out of the color scheme, it's just, it's not dead center, I guess. You know, like, it's a hue that's slightly different. Okay. I'm trying to imply a little bit of form here so it doesn't look like a flat beak. So I'm just imagining if the light is coming from top right and that beak has a crease in the center, I could represent that crease with a black line, or I could imply it with color. And I think I will imply it with color. think that looks kind of cool. Helps these look more three-dimensional. Do some detail on the stake. Now here's a spot where I can deviate, or not really deviate, but I can leverage that other green that I didn't want to use. I didn't want it to be dominant in the painting, but it's okay if it's in there a little bit, just as a shade. Seeing all these little spots that I missed here. I'm being kind of quick about this too, just because I want to get her done. Hate that I even said that. Get her done. It is what I want to do, though. Couldn't have said it any more eloquently than that. Get her done. Okay, so indigo. I'm going to shift that a bit towards purple for the highlight. That's a bit too much. There we go, because I want it to be pretty close to that original color, but not so that it's exactly the same as that other purplish color. I want this to just look like it's kind of three-dimensional rather than being just flat. So putting this edge on it really helps with that. No, I'm talking less and painting more now, but that's, I can't paint very fast and talk. So I do see on the beak here, I want to add in a yellow edge there to help that stand out. Much better. And then I think we just need a little bit of shading on that purple stuff. And then I think what I will do is, oh, I see something I missed. Little indigo spots here that need to be in there. I think rather than add a highlight, I'll add a shadow. We'll try that and see how that works. Yeah, I think that looks, it needs to be a bit darker. Noticeably darker. Thing with contrast, you know, if it's not dark enough, no one's going to be able to see it. It'll just look like the same color. So, you know, sometimes contrast needs to be exaggerated in order to be more obvious. Contrast kind of puts a spotlight on stuff sometimes. It's a good way to draw focus to a certain part of your piece, just to make it more obvious what you were trying to do. A little quick about this here. You probably take your time. I'm going to switch to my other screen here. Wrong one, wrong one, wrong one. Which one is it? This one. So what happens when you have like 20 scenes in XSplit. I gotta say, I'm really liking XSplit compared to OBS. XSplit and OBS are the applications that I use to live stream. OBS was cool for a while because it was free, but you know, there's always a reason why there's a paid version of something. Paid versions aren't always better, but in this case, it's definitely a lot better experience using XSplit over a free live streaming application, but I could still totally get by with OBS if I needed to. I got the lifetime license for XSplit, which I think was like 200 bucks or something. It wasn't cheap, but you know, if you just do it like a monthly subscription or whatever, I think it was still like 10 or 20 bucks or something. So I figured, you know, probably gonna be doing a lot of live streaming. And it's a business expense, so that kind of stuff you get to write off on your taxes. Now that's not tax advice because I am not a tax expert, but you can write off stuff if it's used for your business. And I don't live stream for pleasure, so there you go. All right, one last thing that I want to do to this is I want to add some stars. So we want this to look kind of like a galaxy. And this will help give it that kind of sparkly Mardi Gras feel. Now I don't need all of these to be perfect T's, little plus shapes like you see when stars are kind of twinkling. They just need to be little indications. They don't need to be all evenly spaced. They don't need to cover the whole thing. Just put them wherever you feel like putting them, and that's where they belong. I know that sounds like something Bob Ross would say, but you know, he knows what he's talking about. Especially if you don't have a whole lot of time. They just go wherever they go. Looks kind of cool. It helps it look a little more cosmic. And then I think I might have said that was the last thing I was going to do, but I lied. I do want to put some shading on the eyes here. Looks more like a mask if I do that. And let's see if that helps. It looks cool, but I'm gonna just leave it without. So there we go. You helped me come up with this idea. I made it happen. And we made some art together. So, Ethan's here. Good to see you, Ethan. Sorry that I'm about to leave, but good to see you. This has been recorded, and so it will be available on my channel to watch in all of its glory. Mary says, very cool. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. Xander says, anything can be a job. Yes, indeed. I know there's some questions out there that I didn't answer. But feel free to ask them next time during the next live stream, or if there's a, you know, shoot me a comment or something on a video. Definitely do check out my channel too. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's the best way to know when I'm going to be doing a live stream, especially since I don't, you know, I just do them kind of randomly sometimes. I have lots of videos about digital art, and I release 5 new videos every week. If you enjoyed this live stream and you want to give me a little pat on the back or some encouragement to continue doing these live streams, you can click that super chat button down at the bottom of the chat, and that will allow you to send me any amount of money, even if it's just $1 or something. That's cool, you know. I can end the live stream and be like, sweet, I made $1. But nevertheless, it's still fun to have you watch anyways. Keith is here. Good to see you, Keith. Sayonara to you too, buddy. But what I was saying is, if you have a question, do search my channel, because I've answered a lot of questions. I have like 1,000 videos, literally, more than that. But there's a good chance that I might have answered some of those questions better than I can do during a live stream. Badger says, beautiful. Thank you, Badger. And Badger says, have a good day. You too, Badger. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and call this a finished live stream. Make sure to like this video too. That helps boost it so, you know, other people can find it. And like I said, subscribe, check out my website, aaronrutten.com. Support me on Patreon, check out some of my courses, all that stuff. There's links to all that down there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.